The Hawks missed plenty of opportunities and choked. Simple as that. Let's talk about it. In the first quarter, the Hawks kicked the first 5 goals and completely dominated. Adelaide kicked their first goal with about 20 seconds left in the first quarter, and at that point, I think everyone, including Adelaide fans, thought it was going to be a blowout. We pretty much played a completely perfect quarter up until quarter time. So the first quarter was one of our best for the season, and the second was literally our worst quarter for the season, back to back. It makes no sense. We didn't get a single score. We looked slow in the midfield, and it was just, I don't even know how it happened. How do you go from pretty much a 5-goal-0 first quarter to 0 score in the second quarter? I just don't understand. Then in the third quarter, the Hawks kicked 6 goals to Adelaide's 2, and the Hawks were up by 8 at 3-quarter time. Fun fact, 23 of the 28 total goals for the whole game for both teams were scored at the same end. So I don't know if there was no wind or anything either. The conditions were almost perfect. Hawthorn's 4 tall forward lineup. Look, it didn't not work, but it didn't work either. I think it was just lack of opportunities, especially in that second quarter, because obviously we didn't score. It wasn't really down there as much as we would like it to. I think Charles should have played more ruck minutes, and he should have been in the ruck in the forward half and left Meek a kick behind the footy. Lewis and Deer, they competed. Deer was very quiet, pretty much did nothing in the first half, and I don't think it was bad when it came to the 4 tools. I think the fact that the sub wasn't made at half-time is what really cost us, because Deer basically did nothing for the first half of that third quarter, and if he got subbed out at half-time, then we would have had a bigger boost in the third quarter. We kicked 6 goals to 2 in that third quarter. Let's say Warple comes on at half-time, or at the start of the third quarter, it probably could have been 7 or 8 goals to 2, or maybe even 8 goals to 1 if everything went our way. I wouldn't say not to play 4 tools next week, because Gunston is a hybrid. He's sort of a third tall, which is alright, and if Chol plays ruck, then it's sort of a rotation. I think the minutes should have just been managed a bit better, and I said in my previous video I assumed one of those tools was going to get subbed off, and they did, but it should have been earlier. It should have been at half time. I don't get why Sam Mitchell is starting a midfielder as a sub, one of our most important players, even though he's not great right now, as a sub when we're already lacking in the midfield, and then we didn't get a single score for the second quarter, and he doesn't pull the trigger. He should have pulled the trigger. That was bad coaching in my opinion. I don't say that often about Sam Mitchell. I think I've only said it once or twice this season that he's made the wrong move, and that was one of them. So yeah, I think that was just more coaches than players in my opinion. Another big issue from the Adelaide game was the over-handballing. Look, when it works, it's great, but we're handballing and over-handballing and then turning it over in either the middle of the ground or around half forward. And I think one time, Amon got the extra handball, he received the extra handball and was caught on his right side and then turned it over, which led to an Adelaide goal. But we're playing the handball game as if we don't have 2 massive key forwards that can mark the footy now, because Deer and Lewis are back, obviously. And there were times that you should have just gone long. A long kick to full forward, let the bigs contest the footy, and then the small forwards can do their thing, because we're some of the best small forwards in the game. But they didn't. They handballed it like we don't have a big guy to kick to up forward. We do now, so we need to fix that, because there were probably 3 or 4 occasions where we probably could have gone long and gave our forwards more opportunity, but we gave the extra handball and turned it over or didn't execute properly, and yeah, it just didn't work. We need to go long, because we've seen what Deer can do in the air. He can contest everything, and even if he doesn't mark it, he's most likely going to bring it to ground. Same with Lewis, so yeah, we have to fix that immediately in my opinion. Now look, yes, the second quarter was pathetic, and that's probably what lost us this game, but Massimo D'Ambrosio, mate, you're almost directly in front. You're considered one of the best kicks in the entire competition, and if you're not considered the best by people, you're probably in the top 5 in everyone's best kicker in the league, and you're missing it from directly out straight in front. Horrible. I don't want to bag him, because I love him as a player. He's one of my favourite players, but mate, if that goes in, that cuts the lead back to 5 points, and then after he missed that, Adelaide went down about probably less than a minute later and kicked a goal. Taylor Walker kicked a goal. So, yeah, if that goes through, we get a clearance from the centre bounce, potentially go forward again. We could win this game. But, yeah, I think you could tell the momentum just died, because Adelaide kicked probably 2 or 3 other goals after that and took all the momentum. So, yeah, unfortunately, it happens, all right? It happens. I'm not bagging Mass at all, because he was probably the best on ground. If he kicks that goal, 90% of people would probably consider him the best on ground last night. And at the end of the game, Gunston kicked a point, and I think throughout the game he kicked another 2 out in the 4. I could be wrong, but he missed a few easy ones, which it happens, you know. Then Watson rushed it and kicked a point, probably wasn't going to win the game at that point anyway, and then Scrimshaw launched it from outside 50, didn't make the distance. Look, the last 2 probably weren't winning the game anyway, but if we took our time, then who knows what could have happened. But yeah, we had about 4 opportunities in that last quarter to kick goals, and we didn't. And if we kick 4 of those goals, we win that game. So yeah, unfortunately, after the Massimo miss, the momentum swung. We could see the Hawks put their heads down. The energy was low. Adelaide gained momentum, and yeah, they took the game from there. Also, the umpiring was shocking, some of the worst I've ever seen. I'm not saying that's the reason Hawthorn lost, because it definitely wasn't. I repeat, the umpires were not the reason Hawthorn lost, but that Rankin mark when it was touched and Sicily gave away the 50-metre penalty. Look, Rankin probably would have gone back and kicked the goal anyway, but in that situation, it makes no sense to me, because Rankin went to play on twice. Like, he stepped off his mark, even though it was only one step, he stepped off his mark twice. It was clearly touched. Sicily went in. Like, if it's a clear mark and Rankin takes that mark, Sicily obviously isn't going to do what he did and go to pressure the man with the ball. So in that situation, the loud crowd, it was touched. The player who marked it and Rankin thought it was touched. That needs to just be like, okay, reset. It was a miscommunication. Rankin needs to go back and take the set shot. Because if, like I said, if Rankin takes that mark clearly, Sicily's not going to do what he did. And even Rankin thought it was touched. And like, if that decides a final, or if that decides a game where it could potentially decide final spots, then that's a big deal. And that umpire doesn't have a job. Like, let's be honest. Another time, there was an Adelaide player and a Hawthorn player behind the guy who marked it. They're sort of trying to run around and get out of the way. And it was a free kick against Adelaide, a 50-metre penalty against Adelaide. And as a Hawthorn supporter, that was just completely incorrect. But yeah, I don't know, they're getting strict on that, which is ridiculous, because you're going with your man. And so if the teammate of the player with the ball can go into that spot, but the opponent can't, then it should not be a 50. Like, it definitely shouldn't have been a 50. And there were about half a dozen, if not more, occasions where both teams, the player grabs the footy, gets tackled immediately, and it's holding the ball, no prior opportunity. They're trying to get rid of no prior opportunity to speed the game up. I hate it. I hate it so much. Yes, there are times where they definitely could throw it on the boot, but in that situation, let's say you have the footy, you're getting tackled, one arm's pinned, you're trying to stay on balance and not get your head smashed into the ground. And it's a free kick, even though you have no prior opportunity. It happened probably 4 or 5 times for both teams, and I think it's a bad look for the game. It's a bad look. Yes, it speeds it up, but you know what else to speed the game up? Not having a sub and not having restrictions on interchanges. That would speed the game up, because that would have fresher legs and players would just be better all rounds. Now, next week's game against Collingwood is going to be very interesting, because Collingwood are coming off a 5-day break and they have Brisbane on the Saturday night. Hawthorn play better at the G. They match up better against the Pies. Look, we still have a chance of beating the Pies, don't get me wrong, but we need to sort out this midfield problem. Like, we just don't have the numbers in the midfield. Warpler's a sub. Look, if we had a Hustwaite or a Butler, or just one more midfield, or a McKenzie, one more of those guys in the midfield, and Warple was a sub, look, that works, because Warple had 13 touches in about a quarter and a half, turned it over 5 times at about 35% efficiency. So it wasn't great, but to be fair, it was a pretty high pressure game. But yeah, if we do the same lineup and, I don't know, maybe rest one of the tall forwards for a Butler or a Hustwaite or a McKenzie, I think we can do alright against the Pies. But other than that, we won't know until we see it. So yeah, thank you for watching. Let me know your thoughts and opinions. I'd love to hear them.